The mockery. The grand hall of Virex 7 was filled with alien voices, soft, cold, and sharp like crystal. On the silver stage stood Zerea, daughter of a proud Valari noble house. Her eyes were bright blue, her skin smooth and silver white like marble. She wore a robe of shimmering threads, and on her face was a confident smirk. Zerea pointed at the human ambassador standing below the stage. "Humans," she said loudly, "are strange creatures. They talk about love, emotions, and bonding like it's something powerful." Her people laughed. Their voices echoed through the hall like breaking ice. They cry, they hug, they kiss. How pathetic. The humans at the gathering stood quiet. They did not fight back. That made her laugh even more. She enjoyed the attention, she enjoyed the mockery. Zerea stepped down from the stage and walked through the crowd. That's when she saw Captain Jalen Cross, the human military advisor. He was standing calmly near the side wall. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't angry. He just looked at her with a soft, thoughtful expression. Zerea walked up to him. "You have something to say, Captain?" she asked, tilting her head. Jalen nodded. "Only that I hope one day you'll understand what love really is." Zerea blinked. "Understand? I was born to greatness. Why would I need such weakness?" Jalen didn't argue. He just looked into her eyes and said softly, "Because when all else is gone, love is what makes life worth living." She didn't respond. She walked away feeling strange. That look in his eyes. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was something else. Something calm. Something warm. That night, Zerea sat in her chamber, high above the city of glass, towers. She watched the stars from her balcony. For some reason, she couldn't forget Jalen's voice. Why did it bother her? She shook her head. Humans are weak, emotional, unstable. She told herself that again and again. And yet, why did her heart beat faster when she thought of that calm gaze? The next morning, alarms echoed across the sky station. Warning. External breach on Sector 9. The robotic voice repeated across all channels. Zerea was on her way to the diplomatic wing when she saw people running. She frowned. "What is this chaos?" she whispered. Suddenly a blast rocked the corridor. The wall cracked, and a blast of pressure threw her off her feet. Her head hit the floor. Her vision blurred. Through her blurry eyes, she saw two armored figures step through the smoke. Pirates, mercenaries, enemies. She reached for her communicator, but her arm was too weak. Her breath was short. She couldn't move. One of the attackers pointed his weapon at her. She closed her eyes, but the shot never came. Instead, a strong body covered hers. Blaster fire rang in her ears. She opened her eyes and saw him, Jalen Cross, his face just above hers, his body protecting her like a shield. He fired back at the attackers with one hand while his other held her close. Zerea gasped. "Why? Why are you doing this?" "Because you're worth saving," he said through clenched teeth. The attackers ran when station security arrived. Jalen dropped his weapon and collapsed next to her. Blood ran from his shoulder. Zerea stared at him in shock. "You're hurt," he smiled weakly. "Better me than you." She didn't understand. She couldn't understand. No one had ever protected her like this. No one had ever risked everything for her, not without expecting power, praise, or reward. He had no reason, no gain, just heart. She touched his hand gently. It was warm, strong, but trembling. "Human," she whispered. "You are a fool." Jalen chuckled softly. "Maybe, but that's love." For the first time in her life, Zerea didn't laugh. She just sat beside him, holding his hand as the medics arrived, and in her chest, something began to melt, something cold, turning warm. The lights in the medical bay flickered. Soft beeping filled the quiet room. Captain Jalen Cross lay on the narrow bed, his shoulder wrapped in layers of gel bandages. His chest rose and fell slowly. He was asleep, but not resting. Outside the glass wall, someone stood still. Zerea, the proud Valari, noble, watched him in silence. Her arms were crossed, but her fingers trembled. She had returned 3 times now. Each time she told herself it was just curiosity. But now she was staring, longer than before. The nurse walked by. "He will recover," the nurse said gently. "You don't need to worry, ma'am." Zerea turned her head quickly. "I'm not worried. I just wanted to see." How foolish he was. The nurse smiled and walked away. Zerea stepped into the room. Her boots made soft clicks on the metal floor. She stopped beside the bed and stared down at Jalen. He looked so peaceful. Too peaceful for someone who nearly died to protect a woman who mocked him. Her eyes moved to his hand. It rested calmly on the sheet. Last night, that hand had pulled her from death. Last night, that arm had shielded her body from fire. "Why?" she whispered, barely breathing. "Why did you do it?" Suddenly, Jalen stirred. "Because it was you," he said, eyes half open. Zerea stepped back, startled. "You're awake?" He smiled. "Kind of. Painkillers. Dreams." His voice was rough but still gentle. "Didn't expect you to come back." She frowned. "Don't flatter yourself, human. I just wanted to understand what made you risk your life like a fool." Jalen slowly turned his head to face her. "It wasn't a risk to me. It was instinct. You were in danger. I could stop it. So I did. But we're not friends, we're not allies. I insulted you, I mocked your kind." Her voice rose. "And yet, I didn't hesitate," he whispered. Zerea turned away as if hiding something in her eyes. Later that day, she sat in the High Council hall. Her father, Lord Marin, spoke with rage. "This human put hands on my daughter. This cannot be forgiven. He will be removed from duty." The council agreed. Zerea didn't speak. Her mouth was closed, but her mind was a storm. They were wrong. Jalen hadn't hurt her. He saved her. But the Valari didn't understand things like sacrifice. They only understood control. That night she returned to the medbay again. This time she found Jalen awake, sitting up, looking out the window. "You came back," he said, not surprised. "I need answers," she said firmly. He nodded. "Ask." She sat beside him. The silence between them was thick but not uncomfortable. Zerea finally spoke. "What is it? This thing called love. Why would anyone give so much for nothing in return?" Jalen looked at her with tired eyes. "Love isn't about getting something back, it's about seeing worth in someone, even when they don't see it themselves." Zerea's voice was soft. "You saw that in me?" "I saw a girl raised in ice, who didn't know she was shivering. Her chest ached. She didn't know why." He gently placed a small box in her hand. "Open it when you're ready." She left without a word. Back in her chamber, under the alien moons, she opened the box. Inside was a folded human drawing. A flower. Delicate, hand-sketched, and under it one line. "To feel is not weakness, it's life." Zerea held the drawing close, and for the first time in her life, her eyes felt warm. The rain fell on glass rooftops of the sky station, soft and silver like a whisper from the stars. Zerea stood outside in the drizzle, without a hood, letting the cold drops run down her cheeks. But those weren't the only things wetting her face tonight. She gripped a folded paper in her hand. The human drawing. The flower. It had become wrinkled from how many times she opened and closed it. "I don't understand you, human," she whispered to the night. "And yet, I cannot stop thinking about you." Behind her, the soft mechanical doors hissed open. A message came through her wrist link. "Human Officer Jalen Cross discharged from medbay. Location, Garden Dome." She didn't wait. She followed the path of blue lights and headed there, fast and silent. The garden dome was a place few Valeri visited. It was made for humans, filled with colors, smells, and green life. For Zireya, it always felt too alive. But now she stepped inside with purpose. There he was. Jalen Cross, sitting under a glowing tree, his bandaged shoulder moving slightly as he tried to feed tiny alien birds from his hand. Zireya walked straight toward him. No greetings, no hesitation. You're a fool. Jalen raised his brow but didn't argue. Good to see you again, Zireya. She threw the folded flower sketch in his lap. You gave this to me like it was some treasure. You bled for me like I was someone worth saving, but I insulted you. I mocked your species. Why do this? Why protect me? What do you want from me? He calmly looked at the paper and gently picked it up again. I want nothing. Her voice cracked. That doesn't make sense. Maybe not to your world, Jalen said softly, but to humans. It's simple. We care. Sometimes for no reason at all. Zireya stared at him. But why me? He smiled, slow and kind. Because under all that pride, I see someone lonely. Someone who laughs because she doesn't know how to cry. She took a shaky step back. You know nothing about me. I know enough, he said. And I know. You didn't come here just to be angry. She turned her back to him, hiding the confusion in her face. I didn't ask for this. I know, he said. That's what makes it real. Later that evening, the Valari command held a closed meeting. Zireya's father sat at the head of the table. The humans are growing too bold, he said. They've become dangerous. That soldier, Cross, he influences my daughter. I want him off this station. Zireya stood in the shadows, listening. Her breath caught. Her father continued. We'll call it a diplomatic transfer. A polite way of removing the threat. Zireya's fingers tightened into fists. A threat? He called the only being who had ever shown her gentle care. A threat? She turned and left without a word. The next day, Zireya found Jalen again. This time she didn't mock. She didn't question. She simply sat beside him. They're sending you away, she said softly. He nodded. I know. And you're just going? He looked at her, calm as always. Would you fight to stay? She didn't answer. He smiled. That's what I thought. She looked at him, something raw and real behind her sharp eyes. Then let me come with you. Jalen was silent for a long time. Then he asked, Do you even know what that means? Zireya looked at the stars above and whispered, No, but maybe. I'm ready to learn. And for the first time, Jalen reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. The stars above the station shimmered like cold diamonds. Inside her dark chamber, Zireya stood motionless, staring at the small potted flower on her desk. It was dying. Its petals, once full of soft human color, were curling in on themselves, like they were afraid. She hadn't watered it, not out of forgetfulness, out of confusion. The flower was a gift, not from a soldier, not from an ambassador, but from him, the man she couldn't stop thinking about. Jalen Cross, a human who gave, expected nothing, and still smiled. She had mocked love. Now it felt like her heart had become the soil, dry, cracking, scared of touch. Elsewhere, Jalen stood alone in the observation dome. He looked out at the stars, hands behind his back, remembering the look on Zireya's face when she whispered, Then let me come with you. But she hadn't come. The next day, she vanished. No messages, no visits, only silence. He closed his eyes. Maybe he had asked too much. Zireya, still in her room, finally moved. She touched the flower stem. Why are you still here? She whispered. I gave you nothing, and yet you stayed. Just like Jalen. Her breath hitched. She reached for the water. Slowly, gently, she poured just enough to save it. Her fingers brushed a petal. A small drop of dew clung to the edge. She wasn't sure if it came from the plant or from her. In the training hall that evening, she saw him. Jalen was running drills with other humans. Even wounded, he moved with grace. Calm, steady, focused. She watched from behind the wall, hidden. One of the younger soldiers stumbled and cursed. Jalen helped him up, clapping his shoulder. No anger, no ego. He cared, even when no one watched. Zaraya stepped forward, then stopped. She looked at herself in the reflection of the glass wall, proud, beautiful, but cold. She placed a hand over her heart and finally said the word she had never dared to say aloud. Alone. That night she entered the human wing for the first time, uninvited. The guards stepped aside. They had seen her before, but this time her eyes looked different, softer. She found him alone in the quiet mess hall, drinking something warm. He looked up, surprised. Zaraya? She didn't answer at first. She walked up to him, placed a folded piece of paper on the table. Then she whispered, "You made me feel something. I didn't know I could feel." Jalen slowly opened the paper. Inside was a drawing. Not perfect, not clean, but hand-drawn by her, a heart, with a crack in the center and a tiny flower growing from it. He looked up. She was still there. "No one's ever drawn something for me before," he said. "No one ever deserved it," she replied. He reached out, just barely touching her fingers. "I thought you disappeared." "I did," she whispered. "But something brought me back." He nodded. "Love?" She hesitated, then slowly nodded once. He smiled. Even a crack in the ice is the beginning of spring, and for the first time, Zaraya smiled too. The chamber lights were dim, but not by accident. Zaraya had turned them down herself. Brightness felt too loud now, too sharp. She sat alone, a cup of untouched Valari tea in her hand, staring at the communicator screen. Her heart was beating, faster than it should. On the screen was one line: Captain Jalen Cross, scheduled for removal from station within 24 hours. Her hand tightened. The cup cracked. Tea spilled over her fingers, but she didn't even flinch. She whispered, "They're taking him away." For what? For feeling? Across the hall, behind thick glass walls, the Valari Council met in silence as they always did. Logic ruled. Emotion was dismissed. Lord Marin, Zaraya's father, stood at the center. His face was cold, noble, unmoved. "This human has interfered with my daughter's growth. He's clouded her judgment with his primitive emotions. He must be sent back to Earth." The others nodded. Zaraya stepped forward from the shadows. Her voice cut through the chamber like fire through frost. "No." All heads turned. Lord Marin's eyes narrowed. "You are not allowed here, Zaraya." She stepped closer. "I don't care. You speak of growth, but all I've done is suffocate under your silence. You shame yourself speaking for a human." "I speak for myself," she shouted. Her voice cracked, raw and real. "I mocked human love. I laughed at them. But then one of them, he, showed me what we've all forgotten. Kindness without reward, protection without power, warmth without cost." A quiet gasp echoed through the hall. Her father stood still. Zaraya kept going, her voice trembling but clear. "Jalen Cross did what no Valari ever did. He saw me, not my title, not my blood, me. And that is more powerful than anything you could teach. You will be removed from noble lineage," her father said. "You will lose your inheritance." "I'd rather lose that," she said, "than lose the one person who made me feel alive." Back in his quarters, Jalen stood by his packed bag. He had heard nothing from Zaraya for hours. He figured it was over. He picked up the flower drawing she gave him, gently placed it in his inner pocket. "I guess this was too much to hope for," he whispered. Suddenly the door slid open. Zuraya burst in, her eyes were wet, her voice breathless. They tried to erase you. He turned, stunned. Zuraya? But I didn't let them, she said. They call it shame. I call it truth. I stood for you. His voice softened. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she said, stepping closer. And if they send you away? She paused. Then I'm leaving too. Silence filled the room. Jalen took a slow breath. Are you sure? She nodded. This station is full of glass and pride. But I don't feel anything here. Not like I feel when I'm with you. He stepped forward. You don't know Earth. You don't know what life will be like. I don't care. I'll learn. Jalen touched her face gently. You're not laughing anymore. She looked up at him, her eyes glowing under the soft light. No, she whispered. Now. I'm feeling. And when their lips met, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, warm, honest, the kind of kiss that melts stone. The wind on Terra Luna, a peaceful neutral colony, was gentle like a memory, soft, warm, and always moving. It carried scents of wildflowers and old trees, the kind of world where machines were quiet and the stars felt closer. Zuraya stood barefoot in the grass for the first time in her life. She wiggled her toes. It felt strange, ticklish, but alive. Beside her, Jalen Cross watched in silence, smiling like a man who had just witnessed something sacred. You're not cold? He asked gently. Zuraya shook her head. No. For once, I feel just right. It had been 12 days since they left the sky station. The Volari court declared her name erased from nobility. Her father never spoke to her again, but none of that mattered now. Here in this quiet world of green hills and human laughter, she was not a noble. She was just Zuraya. Jalen built a small home with help from the local settlers. Wood, stone, solar, panels, nothing fancy, but warm, real. Zuraya helped too. At first she didn't know how to hammer a nail or grow food. She burned rice twice. She planted seeds upside down. But she laughed, and not in mockery. This time, it was real laughter. Each mistake made her more human, and each moment with Jalen made her heart softer. One evening they sat on the roof, wrapped in a blanket, watching the twin moons rise. Zuraya rested her head on his shoulder. My people used to say emotions made us weaker. Jalen looked at her. And now? She smiled. I think they were afraid of what love might change. He gently kissed her forehead. You've changed more in days than most do in years. Zuraya stared up at the stars. I want to learn more. About humans. About your ways. Your food. Your music. Your stories. Jalen chuckled. Even the embarrassing ones? Especially those, she said with a grin. One morning, Zuraya stood before a mirror wearing a simple cotton dress Jalen had brought her from the town. She turned slowly, fingers brushing the soft fabric. No armor, no title, no command badge, just a girl. She saw herself and liked it. That afternoon, Jalen brought a surprise, an old music player with Earth songs. He played one called Stand By Me. As the tune filled their home, Zuraya tilted her head. This is beautiful. It's a love song, Jalen said. She closed her eyes and listened, then slowly held out her hand. Dance with me, she whispered. He blinked. You know how to dance? No, she said, stepping closer. But I trust you. They moved slowly, awkwardly at first. Her steps were unsure. His hands were gentle. But then, something clicked, like their bodies remembered what their minds didn't. She rested her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. And for the first time, it matched her own. As the music faded, they stayed still, wrapped in each other. Zareya looked up, eyes soft. I thought I had to give up everything to feel this. You did, Jalen said softly. But you also gained everything. A breeze blew through the open window. Outside, the stars glowed brighter than usual, and in that moment, Zareya knew this wasn't exile, this was home. The council chamber on New Terra Union Station buzzed with tension. Aliens from across the galaxy sat in silence, waiting for the speaker to arrive. The room was grand, gold lines glowing softly across dark stone walls. The Valari delegates sat, cold and proud, in the center row. To their side, the human ambassadors waited, calm and silent, but the real attention was on the stage, still empty. And then, she walked in. Zareya, not in armor, not in royal robes. She wore a simple traveler's cloak. No badge, no crown, only peace in her step and something strange in her eyes. Warmth. Jalen Cross walked beside her but didn't stand with her on stage. He nodded once and stepped back. This was her moment. Zareya stood at the center of the galaxy's highest room. She looked out at them all. And then, she did the unthinkable. She smiled. My name, she began, no longer matters to the Valari. I have no house, no status. They erased me when I chose to follow something they feared. The chamber shifted. Some whispered. Others listened closer. Zareya continued. I once mocked love. I called it weak. I laughed at it. Until a human showed me what love truly is. She looked toward Jalen for just a second, then back at the crowd. Love is not weakness. It is courage. It is risking your safety for someone who may never thank you. It is giving when there is nothing left. It is standing in silence beside someone whose soul is shaking. She paused. The Valari taught me logic, but the humans taught me life. One of the Valari elders stood. And what has this love cost you, child? Zareya looked at him with steady eyes. It cost me pride, but gave me truth. It cost me my past, but gave me a future. Then softly she said, I am no longer ashamed of feeling. I am no longer afraid of love. Later, on a quiet hill under the twin moons of Terra Luna, Zareya sat beside Jalen. Once more, they had built a small garden. She placed the same flower he once drew for her in the soil. It had bloomed fully now, alive and glowing. Do you think, she asked, that others like me can change too? Jalen brushed a strand of silver hair from her face. You did. That means others can. She leaned against him. I still feel strange sometimes, like I'm two people, old Zareya and the new one. He held her close. That just means you've grown. She smiled softly. I never thought I would say this, but I don't want to go back to who I was. Then don't, Jalen said. You're more than who you were born to be. She nodded slowly. I finally understand now. He looked at her gently. Understand what? Zareya whispered, her voice light as moonlight. That love doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you were always meant to become. And with that, she kissed him, not out of confusion or fear, but from knowing. The stars above shimmered brighter that night, and far across the galaxy stories would spread, not of war or power, but of an alien girl who laughed at love, until she became its truest voice.